To discard this whole fast tank push strategy, it's to rearrange the key elements to respond to these zerglings. So an appropriate response would be to get the academy before the factory. As a result, I could get more fire bats and a bigger medic marine army and later tanks. But again, this is okay. It's okay that my fast tank push is a little bit later, because his layer is a little bit later as well. So again, I still get my stim and my siege mode and my tanks coming out with the same relative timing that I was using before. I just got that academy before the factory. That way I could get more anti-zergling units, so my later push could deal with his mass zergling army, but still crush him before he got those mutalisks out. Suppose in my 12th game doing this strategy, that I encounter an opponent who's going fast 9-pool speed zerglings against me. I can't now suddenly just get one marine and go straight for my factory as I did in my original build. I should be getting a lot more marines early on to hold off that zergling number. Moreover, this again doesn't screw me up. The idea of my fast tank push suddenly isn't invalidated because he got zerglings early. He's still almost certainly going to be expanding and then getting mutalisks. So it's okay for me to make those extra marines and then proceed as normal, then get my factory, my academy, my stim siege, and possibly my engineering bay to wrap things up. So again, this is the key idea that I want to hammer home again and again and again. A strong player with a good idea for a build does not look for ways to deviate away from his build based upon what his opponent is doing. Rather, he looks for ways to rearrange all the crucial elements of his build so that he can continue down the same path that he wants every single game. It's all about rearranging key elements, not about deviations and changing your game plan. With all this in mind, I want to move on to part 4, which is a personal anecdote of how I created a Zerg vs. Terran build on Gaia using this build order theory I've just described. I started with a general idea, identified the key components, and then figured out how I would respond to all the different possible Terran openings to make sure that my build order worked the exact way I wanted every single time. Before I say anything, let me briefly note that this build is not for vertical positions on Gaia. That is, it is not for top right versus bottom right or top left versus bottom left. Those games play out totally differently and really weird, so I'm not even going to go into it. So, let's suppose that my opponent and I are on opposite sides of the map. Like I'm top right and he's top left. Or I'm bottom left and he's top right. Something like that. The big question I always ask myself whenever I'm developing a new build or a new style of play on a map is, what do I want my mid-game to look like? The answer to that question is my big idea of my build order. That has a lot to do with the fact that mid-games tend to converge in StarCraft, which is a whole nother discussion, but again, just to sort of breeze right through it, I just ask myself, what do I want my mid-game to look like? On Gaia, I note that in the center is a big, fat, wide-open lane. It's not quite an open circle like on Lost Temple or on Luna. It's more of a wide path. So when I look at that, I think, in the mid-game, I want a really big Lurker Hydra army to crush Terran's first push. That is my big idea, is to secure the mid-game with Hydra Lurker. Yeah, sure, I might be going for Guardians and Defilers and Ultras later on in the game, and then I might open up with Lurker Ling or something like that, but in the mid-game, I want to have Hydras and Lurkers as my main defense. So, what are the key components to this build? Obviously, I need the 3 upgrades, Hydralisk Speed, Range, and Lurkers. I also want 2 Evolution Chambers, upgrading +1/+1. I want 2 extra gas, so I have 4 gas total. I want those expansions to be my side expansion and my natural at the other main. I don't want to take the other main on my side because my big Hydra Lurk army is a little slow, so if that main got dropped, it's kind of tough to get all my units up there. However, if I just took the natural at that main, my Hydra Lurk can just mosey right over there and defend it much more easily. I need a Spire so I can get Scourge to kill dropships. Because again, my Hydra Lurk isn't too mobile. If I have a big Hydra Lurk army in the middle to hold his push, and he drops in my main, it's pretty tough for me to get all the way back into my main. So those are pretty deadly. I also want Overlord speed, because it's really nice to be able to spot his army completely. I'm not going to be doing any cute harassment stuff with Mutalisks, so I won't get the vision potential given by those Mutalisks. I need Overlord's position in really nice places. Again, these Overlords with speed are also instrumental in holding off dropships with the Scourge. And the last component I want is a Queen's Nest. I'm not going to go into extensive detail with what I'm doing in the late game. All I need to know is that I must transition to that at some point, so I may as well just throw the Queen's Nest and the Hive in there. So my short list of key components is Hydra Speed, Hydra Range, Lurkers, 2 Evo Chambers upgrading, 2 expansions, a Spire with Scourge, Overlord Speed, and one thing I didn't mention earlier is that I might need Ling Speed in some of these variations. Zerglings are really good early on. Let's talk about all the openings that Terran can do and how I rearrange the key elements of this Hydra Lurker build so I have a big Hydra Lurk army in the middle. In virtually all circumstances, I'm going to be opening with a standard 3-hatch sort of build. I'm going to be going 12 hatch, 11 pool, 13 hatch. Totally normal opening, gets me a lot of drones. Awesome. Let's talk about when my opponent does a fast tank push, the same tank push I described earlier in this talk. First of all, think about what Zerg actually sees. The Zerg sends his scouting drone out, sees 2 barracks, a refinery going up kind of quickly, but then that drone has to leave. Fortunately, I do have the following information. My Terran opponent is pretty much not early expanding. He's doing some sort of one-base play against me. So he's going to be having more units early on, and he's also going to be getting his starport faster with dropships. So in my base, I'm going to open up with my standard 3-hatch tech that I mentioned, go for layer and get Lurkers and Zergling speed, but I'm going to cut drone production to make sure I have enough units. I'm also going to be getting my Spire alongside that Lurker-Ling combination, because I know that, for example, if he did some sort of fast tank push, a lot of players will follow that up with a dropship, or he might even go straight for dropship, and it's really important that as I push out more to the middle of the map that I have the Scourge in time to kill any dropship harass he's doing. A potential concern would be that if I am getting the Spire and then a whole bunch of Lurker-Ling early on, that my economy will be wounded. Not only do I have a lower drone count, but I will have delayed taking those 2 expansions that is part of my whole build plan to begin with. This is okay, however, because although my economy is delayed, it's delayed proportional to my Terran opponent. My opponent is one-basing, so his economy is behind as well. So it's okay that I don't have nearly as many drones. It's more important for me to just not die. So in some circumstances, if I know that I won't be able to get out of my base, let's say he's really aggressively pushing me, he has, a bunch of bunkers and turrets outside my base, I'm totally comfortable getting my evolution chambers early on. I might not get 2 evolution chambers to get the +1 ranged attack and +1 carapace, but I'll throw down 1 to get the carapace upgrade early on. And again, if I'm still being held in my base and I can't take those 2 expansions, I'll get Overlord speed. Once I do end up breaking out, taking those 2 expansions and powering just briefly, maybe getting 6 or 7 drones, that's when I'll get Hydra speed and Hydra range, as well as another evolution chamber for that ranged attack upgrade. As a result, in the end, I'll have that same mid-game plan that I wanted. I'll have all my expansions